everyone. So a while ago I did my Pushy Dreadfuls collection video, and I kind of briefly went over some of the instances in my life where I've had trauma. Sorry, I've got the nervous burps. And about, I don't know, a week or two ago, I watched that Gabby Petito documentary on Netflix, and I remember it happening at the time. But then watching the documentary and it all kind of being kind of concise, it was quite triggering. But at the same time, it made me think a lot, like, about how much that kind of thing's going to help people, you know? And how I've been putting off telling my story on YouTube. It's not so much that I can't talk about it. I can talk about it. And obviously I get triggered and stuff like that when I do talk about it. But I can absolutely talk about it, and I'm fine talking about it. But there's still obviously a certain amount of anxiety there. And it's just like, it's a lot of mental effort. And I've been putting it off, and I thought, you know what? It's probably a good time for me to talk about this issue, because I've talked about being in a cult before in various different videos. This one is one I don't tend to talk about publicly as much. I've told a few people during my life, during the time when things I've got a list of things that I need to make sure I remember, and I'm sure there's things I'm going to forget later on. I'll be like, oh my god, I forgot to talk about that whole saga, that whole thing, you know. There will be things, but I've got a lot of the points here. I didn't want to forget things. I don't really want to have to return to these videos. I feel like I kind of want to do one and done, so I want to try and remember as much as possible. But like I say, I spent a long time with this guy. I feel like I'm spiraling and trying to explain, but I feel like it's probably a good time right now while I am kind of triggered, you know. So I keep coming back to thinking about her, and how, like, if more people did talk about their experiences, more people might recognize the signs. So I feel like I was quite a textbook case, even though it went on for a long time. I was with him for like 7 years. But I used to tell people in real life what kind of things that were going on after a while. It's a point on my list. That's why I put up the list. My squirrel ADHD brain. But yeah, people would react kind of oddly, and I realised then that things were not really quite real. But I'm skipping ahead. Let me start, I guess. I haven't done my makeup today. I'm feeling like maybe I should do my makeup while doing this, just to have something to kind of occupy me at the same time. I don't know, I'll see. Anyway, I also don't really want to edit this much. I kind of just, because I feel like, obviously I've got to go through the whole talking process and going through everything and trying to make sure I don't forget anything and remember everything that I went through and talk about it. But at the same time, because normally when I talk about it, it's like normally a part of that time. I don't normally just tell everyone everything. Like, you know, from talking about it, it's like, oh, something is relevant and I'll mention that part of it. I don't normally tell the entire story. Do you know what I mean? So it's going to be odd, because I'm going to be telling it all, and then I've got to edit it all, which means listening to myself back, going over it. And it just seems like more, because like I say, I'm fine talking about it, but to keep reliving it, I feel isn't great. But I do feel like it's good for me to talk about it every now and then when something is irrelevant. Like when something's relevant, like I say, I feel like it's good. And I also think it's helpful for others to hear other people's stories, especially if they're watching it and they're maybe wondering if they're in an abusive relationship and they're not sure. And then they might see signs from other people's stories and be like, you know what, this is way too similar. Like things like that. I think that helps. So this video comes with a massive trigger. I cannot express enough that it has a massive trigger on it. So if you've already been for this kind of relationship and you do not want to get triggered, maybe this is a video that you skip out on. If you're a person who's been through this kind of thing and you are okay with hearing about it and you would like to just hear someone else's experience, how they got into it, how they lived through it, and then how they got out of it, then you can stick, like, use your own discretion. But I think these kind of videos are really useful for people who either don't know they're in an abusive relationship or are wondering if they are. So yeah, big trigger warning. I really am going to try not to do a lot of editing on this, so it might be long. If you hear clicking, it'd be me messing with my vape because of, fiddle. I need to fiddle stuff. And so I feel like maybe do my makeup at some point if I feel like I'm getting a bit overwhelmed, but I might even try and do this in multiple parts. But I feel like it's always best for me to talk about this kind of stuff when I am triggered by it, because I think a lot of the times I kind of push it down. Okay, so on my list, at the top I've put how we met. So, how me and my ex met. I was 16 and I was looking for my first like proper job, because before then I had worked, like I grew up, like from when I age of 2, my mum had me out in a paper round, so I had always worked. And then when I was about 14, 15, I got a job at this place called King's Burger. And they weren't even paying me like minimum wage, like it was totally illegal. But but I wanted my first real job. And there's a shop in town called Game Station, and it's like GameStop and all that, CEX, all the rest of that. And I went to work there. And there's my assistant manager there, and he was like 5 years older than me, so I think he was 21 when I first met him, and I was 16. And I got hired originally as a Christmas temp. And apart from him, I actually did really like being there. I liked working around games because I was already a gamer. I loved being around all these retro games that we could buy in and getting discounts. It was a good time. But my assistant manager, I kind of found him really annoying. He used to pick on me a lot. He'd say offhand things, and I just didn't really like it. And like when I broke up with my boyfriend, I had a boyfriend when I first started working there. He laughed about it. He thought it was really funny, and I was really kind of sad. I was really kind of sad about it, and he just thought it was really funny. He kept teasing me about it. Anyway, that's how we met. And then my Christmas temping finished, and about a month or so later, a position arose at the same store, and I applied for it and I got the job. And my assistant manager made a big point that I should be thankful to him because it was because of him that I got the job. Like, they took into account that I'd worked there previously as a Christmas temp, but so other people had applied for the job who'd also worked as Christmas temps there, and it was down to him is the reason why I got the job. He put in the good word for me. Anyway, I worked there for a good year. After that, I'd say maybe a little bit longer. I'm not sure. Time sometimes eludes me. But I worked there for a decent while. It's also a bit more confusing because also he carried on working there once I did leave, and I was always kind of around there anyway. But anyway, I'm getting sidetracked again. Tangents. While I was working there this second time, he seemed to make more of an effort to not want to piss me off, because I think he realised during that Christmas temping stage that I didn't really like him. I didn't initiate conversations with him like I would the other staff members, like the other Christmas tempers, or even the what's it called? There's like your manager, assistant manager, and there's like another person who's like a senior to you guys, but I can't remember what it's called. It begins with like a D, but anyway, I'll talk to him, and he was like a very awkward kind of person. And I'd talk to him, but I wouldn't really talk to my assistant manager, Sonam. I'll just say his first name. His name's Sonam. I wouldn't really talk to him. And I think he realised that. I think he realised that there was a difference in how I was communicating with everyone else. And he started trying to like make the effort to talk to me a lot more. And there came a point where he started saying that I had to be there for stock takes, and like it'd be after work we'd do these stock takes, and he'd say that I had to alphabetize the games, but it wasn't just alphabetize them, it was alphabetize them. So like ABCD, yeah, but then the second letter of the game would also have to be alphabetized. So like like actually alpha. So this would take a long time because we'd have to go through everything like GameCube games, PlayStation games, Xbox games, then all the retro games, and shrink wrapping consoles and all kinds of stuff, and rearranging window displays. And this is something he'd get me doing, you know, on my own with him. And during these stock takes, he would order a pizza and he'd be like, oh, it's on me, you know. And he would make us play Truth or Dare. And during these Truth or Dare sessions, he would always ask me for truths. Nearly always ask me for truths. Sometimes there'd be some dares in there. Everything was always inappropriate, really. It was all so wrong. But I didn't realise, like, I was like 16, so. But yeah, he basically learned a lot of my secrets. He would ask really like personal questions and stuff, and he learned a lot about me, things that I would have probably told the other people quite willingly if things had come up in conversation, but he was kind of forcing answers out of me because we're playing Truth or Dare. And he learned all about how I was raised in the cult and how I never had birthdays and stuff. And obviously I'd worked there as a Christmas temp, and it's like a couple of months later, so around February I think it was, when I went back to work there. So by the time July rolled around and it was my birthday, and he'd realised that I'd never had a birthday, I'd never celebrated a birthday, I'd never had a birthday party, anything like that. And on my birthday, he had I wanted to go home at the end of the day, and he was like, oh no, I need you to go and sort out the shop floor. And I was like, well, on my own, like no one else, because there's like a few other people there that day. And so I was sorting out the shop floor all on my own. I was kind of pissed about it because like it was just taking so long, and it's like, I don't know why I have to do this on my own, you know, just like tidying up shop floor, like, because like someone else would normally hoover and you'd sort out the games, put things in the right place, you know, whatever. So I was kind of pissed. And then when they were done, they come up and fetched me. And downstairs, he was holding one of those chocolate caterpillar cakes with candles on it, and they were like singing me happy birthday, and I was kind of blown away by it, because I'd never had a birthday before, and it was like a surprise party, you know. And everyone I worked with was boys. There was one, actually no, there was two women at one point. One girl who worked there during a Christmas temping job, who he also did things like, it's not my place to speak about, but this other gal, yeah, things I don't know too much about that, but I know enough that it was really messed up. But and another woman who was much older, and but they'd left by this point. So by this point it was just me and the guys. It was just men who I worked with. And they handed me a card and a gift, and in the card, everyone but the awkward guy who said he's like a senior but not like a manager or something. I can't remember what the word is called, what the name is called. But everyone else had written something inappropriate in their sexual things in the card. And then my present was an Ann Summers disco dick. This is my 17th birthday, by the way, guys. And so it was kind of awkward. And then they had like a little giggle because they'd sent the guy who's not a manager but not like the rest of us, the in-between guy. They'd sent him to Ann Summers, like this guy who's like really, really socially awkward and stuff. I know he had epilepsy because he had a few fits while at work. But they sent him to go buy the dildo. And I felt really bad for him that they did that, because I know how awkward that would have made him feel, but they made him to go buy it. But anyway, tangents. I just feel like it's kind of telling how Sonam would make people do things that he knows would make them awkward. Because there was a couple of lads there that day, even himself, who'd have been absolutely fine walking into Ann Summers and buying something like that. But at the end of the day, they shouldn't have bought me something like that anyway. Like, I was a 17-year-old girl, And there are a whole bunch of dudes that I work with buying me a sex toy for my 17th birthday. And basically, we'd spent all this time together and in these stock takes. So I no longer felt like he was this dickhead, you know, like I had done at Christmas. I'd, to a degree, kind of got close to him because we'd had these times where I'd ended basically confided in him, telling him a lot of my secrets I didn't really tell people, you know. It felt like someone had taken interest in me. So even though I was never attracted to him, I was never attracted to him. That's something I always found weird. And it's something I actually joked about at one point, like years later. His sister had said, how did you ever pull Rianne? And I said I was having an off day. Because I never found him attractive. I really didn't. But during all those months of him basically grooming me, during these stock takes, I did feel like I'd got a bond with him. So after the birthday party, this little mock birthday party, we lived in the same area. We lived not even like, I guess, like 10-minute walk from each other's houses. So he caught the bus home with me, and he asked me if I'd be his girlfriend. And I was kind of semi-aware that he had a girlfriend at the time, but he was constantly saying how they were breaking up, you know. So I never really knew the exact dynamic of it until we were already established as a couple. Like, it was probably like a few weeks into it, he actually had said that they hadn't actually broken up, but she knew he wanted to break up, you know, if that makes sense. And so it was more a matter of, once that's all kind of settled, because they lived in a house together and the house was in her family's name. So it just seemed like it was more semantics, tricky getting out of the relationship, you know. So I kind of excused it, I guess. Anyway, we ended up getting together. And my mum had recently started getting together with my stepdad. So they weren't spending a lot of time around my house anyway. So he would often come to my place, right? I was really into that 70s show. I'd been for a long time. Like, I really enjoyed it. And so I had them on DVD and I wanted to show him that 70s show because he said he hadn't ever seen it before. And we'd be watching it and he'd start pinching me, things like that. He'd start just intentionally irritating me. Like, he'd start pinching me and I'd be like, oh, that hurts, like, stop. And he'd be like, oh, I'm bored. And it's like, okay, well, we can watch something else, you know, whatever. But he'd be like, no, this is fine. And then we'd get back to watching. He'd like pinch me some more. Like, he'd pinch me like really sensitive kind of places. Until a point where I'd end up just like whacking him. I'm like, okay, look, stop. That hurts. You know, I'd get mad. And he'd be like, oh, you're getting all violent with me. And it's like, you've been pinching me for like the last hour and I don't know why you're pinching me, you know. That I always think of should have been a really big red flag. I didn't know red flags and stuff like that. So, because this is where things like my cult upbringing converge, because as a woman in a cult like Jehovah's Witnesses, you don't really have any power. And if you have like a partner, the man always is the person you're meant to respect. And I think that really appealed to Sonam, that I was raised to be submissive and kind of take what is kind of thrown at you. And I kind of felt bad often, like, because I would argue with him. Like, definitely after, like, I'd say that the first year, I started to stand up for myself a little bit more, which meant things kind of got worse. But I did stick up for myself. So after an hour of being pinched, yeah, I would whack him, but then he'd make it my problem. Like, I was violent with him. It's like, okay, you weren't punching me, Sonam, but you were pinching me, you were hurting me, and you knew you were hurting me because I was telling you were hurting me, you know, the whole time. And I'd say that, why we can do something else. If you're bored, let's do something else, you know. Anyway, that was just like a red flag that I feel was an early one that I wish I had been more aware of. Is just not right behavior. Do you know what I mean? Another thing that he did is he loved controlling me. He loved being able to make me do things. So back then, I don't know if you might have noticed in other videos, but I have a little hole in my lip. So I used to have my lip pierced here at the time. I had one of my nostrils pierced. I had a few earrings. I had a helix piercing, and I had 3 lobe piercings. So I was just adjusting my earring. And I had my belly button done twice. And I'd had these done since the day he met me. Because I had my piercings done quite young. I think I got my lip piercing done around 15, same as my belly buttons. I think my belly button I did get when I was 16. I think I got that around my 16th birthday. But I had my first belly button piercing done when I was still in high school. And I got my lip piercing done probably a month or so before I actually started working at Game Station. Is when I moved back home. A lot of these things converge with being in a cult and stuff, and I don't really want to get into that when this is meant to be a story about this, but there was a time where I didn't live with my mum while I finished off school. So when I moved back home after finishing school, I then got my lip pierced. Anyway, he never seemed to have a problem with that before. Suddenly, when we were dating, he had a problem with them. He said that they make me look ugly, that he'd rather me take them out. I did one by one. I took them out, apart from my belly buttons. I refused to take them out. This is what I said. Like, I was a little bit defiant, and it kind of went against how I was raised. Even though I wasn't in the cult anymore, there's something that kind of gets ingrained into you a little bit, like the obedience part. And I felt a little bit bad that I didn't kind of do what I was told, but I wanted to keep my belly button piercings. I really liked them, and they were hard to heal. Whereas I didn't really mind so much about the rest. He didn't mind me having my lobes, my first and second lobes, but he thought 3 was a bit too much. And I think if I had agreed to take my belly button out, because he did say he liked the belly buttons, he thought they were sexy. But I think if I'd agreed to take him out, he would have let me. Because I think the whole reason about the piercing thing was that he wanted to see how much control he had over me. And I think it kind of pissed him off that I never did take out the belly button ones, even though he actually kind of liked them. And I think that he kind of liked the fact that he allowed me to keep my lobes, like 1 and 2. I think that's all just like part of him wanting to just control me. Same as at one point my mum had decided she was going to marry my stepdad, my now stepdad, and move into his place, which meant the house that I was living in with her was going to be given back to the council. And at the same time, Sonam had broken up with his girlfriend, and she was going to move out, which I thought was really strange because it was her parents' house. They'd bought it for them to live in. And he'd said that he was going to move in with this guy from work, and they were going to be roommates. But last minute, just around the time that I was about to get kicked out of my family home, he said that this guy at work had pulled out and wasn't going to be moving in, and he needed a roommate ASAP. And like, could I move in with him? I didn't really want to, because my mum kind of had some connections with the council at the time. They were going to arrange to have me get my own flat. And so I kind of was excited about having my own flat, because I'd been living in the house basically on my own, even though it was technically still shared by me and my mum. She spent so much time with Horace that it was kind of like my house, but like it was too big. It was a 2-bedroom house, and there was no reason for a 17-year-old girl to have it. So I was quite excited to have a little flat on my own. But the flats they offered me actually weren't in the same area where I live. So I think probably another reason why he didn't want me to go to a flat, because he'd have to travel further and it'd be harder to keep control of me. Whereas at the time where I was living, like I say, we're only like 10-minute walk away from each other, not even that maybe. But yeah, around time I was going to get kicked out of the house and get this new flat, he said, well, I'd move in with him. So I moved in with him. And it was at this time where he really didn't want me going to college. Because I was going to college, I was studying performance arts at college. Predominantly dance. I was studying ballet, jazz, tap, and contemporary. I'm getting messages. And during that, we're doing some singing, some acting. I really loved going to college. I did. I loved it. I was that kid who would watch all the music videos on TV, learn all the dances. Like, to this day, I still remember so many dances from all the way back in like the early 2000s and stuff. I still remember all of the dances. And I would make my mum and my brothers, like, this is when I was like younger, like 13, 14. I'd make my mum and my brothers come into the room, like, I've learnt this dance, finally got it. Like, you got to sit down and watch me. I was that kid, and I would like do it. I've always enjoyed performing. So I left going to college, and it was something he knew how much I enjoyed. But I don't think he liked me having like friends or a life that he couldn't be a part of. So he would always be like, no, don't go to school, don't go to college today. Like, I want you to stay with me, or I want you to come into work with me today rather than go to college. And I kind of would, because by this point I did know he would get a little bit grumpy when I didn't really do what he said. He wouldn't like get outright like belligerent or anything. That came later. But he would get grumpy and like kind of sulky, and we were living together by this point, so I really didn't want to rock the boat too much. Do you know what I mean? If I needed to stick up for myself, I would. But for the most part, I did toe the line, you know. So anyway, after taking a few days off, I'd start feeling bad, and I'd go back into college, and then you do like the walk of shame, like I've been gone for like 3 days. After a few weeks of that happening, it just starts to kind of get embarrassing and shameful, and he's constantly pressing you not to go in, and you feel like you've lost so much time of college. Like, I could go into classes, and I'd realize that, oh, this show that we were going to put on, like, sorry, I ended up getting a phone call. My little girl wants to come home. I said, can I get like an hour? I don't know if I'll get through all of this in an hour, honestly. It's taken me so long to get through not that many points. I did want to try and make this fast. So I will try and stay on point. It's just hard. It's hard because things can... Anyway. I started realising that I was getting behind in college. We were doing Willy Wonka. I'm going to do my makeup. We were doing Willy Wonka. And I was going to be Veruca. I love playing bad guys. I love playing bad guys. And I realised in one class that I'd had to be replaced because I'd missed so much time. And after that, I decided, you know, I should just drop out. And I did. I dropped out of my... I think I only had like half a year left of my last year of my dance course. I left, and I've regretted it ever since, you know. It's just how it is. But this is the first instance where now, in hindsight, he was just isolating me, you know, trying to get me away from things that I enjoyed, which only continued as time went on. He'd also do the same thing with work as well. If I got a job, because eventually I actually left Game Station and was working in different places, I got a job as a dental nurse. I was really good at being a dental nurse. Yeah, that's the thing. He did want me to take time off from dental nurse, and whenever he had a day off, he would want me to not be at work. But I was actually really good at dental nursing. But what made me leave dental nursing was anxiety. A lot of anxiety. But I won't go into that. It's like a whole different story. But yeah, I kind of hated being a dental nurse. I was really good at it. It's kind of like something that happens in my life. Like, I hate running. I hate sports generally. But I'm blessed at being great at it. And that was kind of how it was at dental nursing. I got a great bedside manner, and I picked it up really, really easily, really well. And I kind of fell into dental nursing. Because back then you could learn on the job. I was really, really good at it. I was really, really good. I became a head nurse at one point. Anyway, I'm off tangent. I have not got time to talk about stuff like that. Anyway, let me have a look at the next point to talk about. Okay. After living with him for a while, I had managed to get in contact with an old friend from school. She had moved away, I think, during year 8 or year 9. And she was like my best friend when I first started school. And we'd got back into contact, me and her. And she'd come up to visit me one time, and it was so nice seeing her, but she'd had to come stay with me in Sonam. It turned out a few months later, he kept saying how he was going to go visit his sister, which was quite a way away. And just the day came where he was meant to be going, but he wasn't going. And I was like, what's going on? And he wouldn't like talk to me or anything. And I didn't understand. Like, he kept saying, oh, something going on with his sister. He's not sure if he's going to go or not now. Then hours later, and I thought, there's no way he's going now. It's the evening now, and I'm actually in the bath at the time. No, he was in the bath. He was in the bath, and I was like, there's no way he's going, because he was not ready. He wasn't ready to go, you know. He's in the bath, and he's been really quiet and really weird. He wasn't talking at all. He got out the bath, and he comes and tells me he's not going, and that he has something to tell me. And what he had to tell me was that him and my friend were actually going to meet up. He was going to go visit her. And he told me all this stuff, how they had been planning for her to come here again, and how they were going to have sex with me in the same bed, and like they kind of got off on the idea of doing all that together. I never understood. I still don't understand why he really needed to tell me all of that. I mean, it did destroy my friendship with this girl for years. We are, I guess, on friendly terms now. We don't really talk, but we do follow each other on social media now. But for years and years, until well after I'd broken up with him, we had no contact after that, me and her. She was pretty mean to me, actually, when I found out. I don't think she expected him to tell me all of this stuff. But, like, obviously I called her up and wanted to confront her about it. And then she, like, I really don't need to go into this because it's wasting time. But she said some kind of racist stuff. Not kind of, very racist stuff. She said she knew people who don't like black people and I should shut up and leave her alone. I like to think she's changed now. We haven't really spoken about it since. But, I don't, like I said, we don't really talk. We just follow each other again. But yeah, it was a very upsetting time. During this time, this is something I would have forgotten about, actually. During this time, because I missed dancing at college so much, I had taken this private dance class for a street dancing class. The teacher was absolutely fine, but I had no interest, you know. He was gorgeous though, and Sonam was absolutely convinced that this guy was in love with me. And because the guy had asked me after my first lesson if I wanted to be an apprentice dance teacher. He really liked that I was really good at the first lesson I went to, and asked me if I had any experience in dance. I was like, yeah, I just come out of college from doing it. And I just wanted to get back into doing some dance. And he was like, oh, well, would you be interested in being an apprentice teacher for like the 10 to 12-year-olds? And I was like, yeah, sure. And so Sonam really didn't like this. He didn't like that I was basically getting a new little people to hang out with and whatever. Things to do that didn't require him in any way. So when he had told me about this whole cheating thing, I actually messaged this dance tutor because there wasn't really anyone who I was talking to at the time. And he said, well, I'll pick you up and we can meet and we can just talk. He never was inappropriate with me. But during this time, it did become clear he did actually like me. So Sonam wasn't completely wrong. But I think Sonam just assumed everyone liked me. Do you know what I mean? But he did like me. But he was never... He never tried anything on me. He never made a pass at me like that. He just... he made it clear that he would have liked to have been with me, and that Sonam didn't deserve me. Anyway, the next day, me and him met up again, and we just talked, you know. And I didn't know what to do. But Sonam managed to worm his way back in, basically, and I took him back after that night. And pretty much after then as well, I basically I wasn't allowed to go to those dance classes anymore. He didn't want me to be around that dance teacher. And he was really good to learn from. I really enjoyed learning from him, because he actually used to be in he was a Michael Jackson. At some point, he was a backup dancer for Michael Jackson. And I really thought that was really, really cool, you know. Because I spent a long time learning the Thriller dance, and it was so cool that this guy actually had done the Thriller dance officially. And I was like, this is really cool. I just liked his vibe. He was a good vibe. I wish I still had connections to him, you know. It'd be nice to see how he's doing. Anyway. Again, something else that I had that he managed to take from me. And also he took a friend all in one. He took two friends. He took another form of me dancing. Another outlet where I didn't have to be around him all the time. Just puts me back in my little pen, back in the house with him, you know. Anyway, it was not long after this that things got a lot more volatile in our relationship. The first really big fight I remember was on my 18th birthday. I don't know what the fight was about. A lot of the fights, I have no idea what they were about. No idea. I cannot remember. A lot of them, I can't remember what started them. I remember one of the last big fights we had when we were actually broken up, but he was still living in my place. I remember what that was about. But a lot of the fights came from what seemed like nowhere. Like, it would seem like things are okay, and then suddenly something come up and pissed him off, and then I was expected to apologise or, you know, kiss his feet, basically. And I just didn't understand why. And I was a teenager. Like, you know, bullshit. So I'd argue back. And he did not like that I would not kowtow to him, because his ex used to. He'd often say to me, I would never have this issues with his ex. I'd never have this with her. She would never talk back to me like this. And he'd tell me things like, he'd say, look, if you ever left me, sure, you'd find someone else to take, yeah? You'll probably find a guy the next day, you know? He's like, but no one would put up with you the way I put up with you. You know, it's the shit he'd say to me. And after a while, you believe it. Especially you spend, like, long enough with these people, and they work on breaking you down, taking all your self-esteem and stuff. You do end up starting to believe this shit. That, okay, maybe he's right. Maybe I could find other people to be my boyfriend, but they wouldn't last, because they wouldn't put up with me like him. He's this, like, saint, really. He puts up with me, you know. So I did. I did believe it. But the first real argument we had, like, not real argument, we had lots of arguments, but first volatile argument was on my birthday. He threw a GameCube at me, and it was like, I don't know, like midnight when it actually started happening, like, and blowing up. And that's like when he threw the GameCube at me, and then at some point, I can't remember, like I say, what really triggered it, but he grabbed me up. I was naked, and he threatened to throw me down the stairs if I wouldn't leave the house, because he wanted me to leave. He wanted me to get out on my 18th birthday at like 2 a.m. by this point, and he wanted me to leave. And I didn't want to leave because it was late, and it was my birthday. Just a year after my very first birthday, you know, where he'd thrown it in the shop, you know. He wanted me to leave, and I didn't want to go. And he basically picked me up and threatened to throw me down the stairs and just throw me out the house, butt naked. Eventually I managed to, like, beg him not to throw me out, not to throw me down the stairs as well, and he didn't. And, like, things kind of settled down. Obviously, the next day was a lot of mostly him trying to make it up to me, but also making sure he reminded me that I was out of order as well. It was always like, oh, it's a bit of both, you know. And he'd always try and make it out like he apologized first. He'd always try and make sure he did apologize first, because then he could throw that back in my face later. He's like, you'll never apologize to me first. I was like, because I didn't think I was really in the wrong. Like, you just like started a fight with me out of nowhere, you know. I'm sure there was times where I was in the wrong, maybe, I don't know. But for the most part, these fights would come out of nowhere. I'll be completely blindsided by them. No idea why they started, why he's only got a bee in his bonnet. You never knew when he was just going to like flip like that, you know. Anyway, I feel like I'm getting off track. Yeah, that actually happened with a few birthdays. Whenever it was my birthday, it would start off nice, the day would be good. People who would see us on those days would think that, oh yeah, he's done all this stuff for her birthday. And then come the evening when we're alone, shit would hit the fan, and it would be like the worst birthday ever at that point, you know. Really sucked. I remember my 21st birthday was another bad one. That was the birthday where ashtray got thrown. And I sprayed him with air freshener. And he was like, you could have made me sterile. Oh, don't attack me then. Like, it's my fucking birthday. Anyway. So, yeah, I did fight back. But I wasn't really any match for him, to be honest. Something in my social media lately is singing. The last few years I've attempted singing. So like I said, I used to do singing when I was at college. I used to really, really enjoy singing. I've never been the best singer in the world. Never been the best singer. I've never claimed to be. But I did used to sing in public. And I used to be able to sing in front of a stage of hundreds of people. Part of going to college and studying performing arts. Even before then, though, I would go to like Haven holidays and to like little Miss Teen competitions and stuff, and my talent would often be singing, and I would sing. I'd like sing like Spice Girls and things like that, and I just really enjoyed it. I think a lot of it for me at the time wasn't so much that I was a great singer, it was more that I could sing and I just liked performing. And I think that was a big thing, that because I won a lot of those competitions, was that I was likable to watch. Do you know what I mean? I had some kind of stage presence, and I was not shy. That was the big thing. And as time went on with Sonam, he would encourage me to do things. So I remember one particular competition there was in a town where I live. It was like a singing competition, and he'd encouraged me to go do that. And like we'd prepare. I was singing Can't Fight the Moonlight. I really wanted to sing that song, and I was like, yeah, you should do it. And like he'd big me up. He's like, oh, I'll like manage you and everything. Like on the like weeks up to it, all would be fine. Like he'd be like, yeah, you're doing great. Like I just think like this bit maybe need a little bit of work, blah 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 blah. But then like the night before the show, he would like, okay, we've got to go over this like over and over and over to make sure you get it right. So like I'll be singing this song over and over and over again, and then he would be so critical of me. He would be so mean. So fucking mean. He'd be like, you're nasally throughout the whole thing. Like you can't stay on tune. You can't stay on. He couldn't sing for shit. Like he even talked in monotone. Like, but you know, he was meant to be coaching me or whatever. And so I would be so fucking shit scared. I wouldn't sleep throughout the night because I would be like, I need to practice more. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to suck. It's going to be so embarrassing. I've never had any of these worries before. I would just do a competition and then sing whatever song I fancied, you know. I just do it, you know. After I wouldn't even practice. So I'd be like, oh, the singing competition? Down. And I just like join in, you know. I was quite a free spirit like that. And like after that, that's the reason why I remember that one, because that was the first one. But he encouraged me to audition for Britain's Got Talent, things like that. And he would do the same thing with those things as well. He would like big me up on the way, like on the journey, on the way up to the date. And then come the date come in, he would like tear me down like the night before. But even then, when there was no competition coming up at all, if I was just singing around the house, and I feel like I'm singing really nicely, I'd be just like, oh, it's really nice, you know. I'm just like enjoying myself, like hollering out my lungs in the kitchen or in the bathroom or something. He'd be like, Oh my God, it sounds like someone shoved a bag of cats in the washing machine. And I'm like, I thought it sounded quite nice. He's like, well, you can't hear yourself sing, really. And that's the thing as well. He would take a lot of things. These are things that he learned from when we were doing like the stock takes and things like that and Truth or Dare. Like, my mum is a very critical person. She's a Virgo. And she would always point out that when we'd like watch things like Britain's Got Talent and X Factor and that, she'd be like, these people who go on who can't sing, like, who tells them that they can sing? Like, she's like, and when you're singing yourself, you often can't hear yourself. And so it was something that he had learned, that although I wasn't like shy to get on stage, I would say to people, I'm not a great singer, I just enjoy it, and I know that I can't really hear myself. You know, it was the kind of thing that I would comment on. So he would take things that he knew were like little insecurities I had about things that otherwise I didn't really see as an issue, but he'd then make them an issue, if that makes sense. So he would say things that would like echo my mum a lot, and that was one of the things as well. He would bring up the fact that, oh, you know, you can't really hear yourself. So like, even though I thought I sounded nice, he'd be like, no. And it made me feel like I was one of those people on X Factor who just like really can't sing and they think that they're like their best. And so eventually there was I think it was an X Factor coming up. He was like, oh, you should audition. And that time I said no. Because the year before I had auditioned for Britain's Got Talent. I sang for my audition, I sang He's the Tramp from Lady and the Tramp, Peggy Lee, and I choked so hard. And they said to me, you got a nice voice, but you need to work on your confidence, because like literally, like one of the guys who were there, because it wasn't like the main judges, they were like, we can see your legs shaking. And that's the thing, I could feel them. I felt like I was going to just collapse to the floor. And that experience like traumatized me so much. Because I knew I could sing that song really well. This is before I had like asthma or anything either. Like now I have asthma. But that was such an ordeal. So that then when he said I should apply for the X Factor after that, I think he realised he'd mission completed, because I had said that no, I'm just not going to do it. I can't sing. And I still don't think that I can't sing. I think I can sing. I'm a karaoke singer. I'm not a professional singer. I'm a karaoke singer. That's how I see myself. But he took all my confidence away to do it. And for years, I couldn't sing around anyone. Even if someone was in like a different room, I couldn't sing. But when I was alone, I could just like belt out and just be happy, because I love the way it feels. I love how singing feels. Like there's like a vibration that comes from it. It made me feel really good, like loads of endorphins and stuff. I really enjoyed it, and I used to enjoy doing it for people. But so the last few years I've been working on building up my confidence like that. I did try it on camera a few times. It's tricky. I tend to be more comfortable singing like silly songs on camera, more serious songs off camera, but I'm still very nervous singing just to the mic and not seeing me. So sometimes I will lip sync my own songs because it makes it easier, so then people will actually listen to it. People don't tend to listen to it if it's just like text on the screen, like a visualization or something. But if I lip sync it, then there's a visual with it and then people tend to watch it a little bit more. But then some people don't realize it's me singing because I'm obviously lip syncing. But anyway, that's just something that has affected me long term. That still affects me to this day, how much he'd managed to destroy my confidence when it came to that. I need a toilet. Anyway, it was during this period of our relationship, which is like the meat and potatoes of our relationship, where all the really bad things started to come to life. He took me away from all the things that I enjoyed doing, my dancing, my singing, and he also started to work on my family. So we were having these big arguments, and I would occasionally tell my mum or my sister-in-law, and he would say, look, don't air our dirty laundry to people. They're not going to like me if you keep telling them about our arguments. So I stopped talking to them. I stopped talking to my family. He'd also make it really awkward. Like when my brothers would come to visit, like there was a point where he did get a flat because his ex-girlfriend wanted to have her house back. So we ended up getting a flat together. It was in my name though. It was because of my mum's connection with the council. I need brushes, sorry. So by this point we were living in a flat. Sorry if things do get mixed up. I might end up going back to the house that we shared, but like just to try and keep things in the kind of format where I can remember things. I don't forget as much stuff. Do you know what I mean? 'Cause this is a long period of my life. This is a big period of my life, and it wasn't the only trauma that was going on at the time either. It's just the biggest trauma that was going on at the time. But yeah. So at this point, we're living in the flat, and my brother would come to visit me. Both my brothers would, and what he would do is he would get in a bath, and he would spend hours in the bath while my brothers were visiting, and they'd be like, are you sure it's okay for us to visit? Like, he hasn't left the bathroom and stuff. I was like, yeah, I know. He said it was just going to be a quick bath. I don't know why he's still in there. Obviously, after a while, my brothers would want to go to the toilet and things like that. Luckily, their dad lived on the same street, because me and my brothers have a different dad. Their dad lived on the same little cul-de-sac that I lived on. So they'd like just nip over to his to go to the toilet and stuff. But he's basically making it really, really awkward for my brothers to come visit. My brothers didn't like him. No one liked him. Let's just get that clear. No one liked Sonam. Oh God, how did I do that? Yeah, no one liked him, and I think he knew that, but he didn't want visitors. He didn't want people to come around to see me. His parents came to live in the same town that we're in, and I had to be devoted to them. That was fine. But he didn't really want me having connections with my family. It really, really bothered him. He did not like it. I was already not talking to them about issues that I had in my relationship with him, because to him that was airing our dirty laundry, and he didn't want me doing that, and that it made him and our relationship look bad. Oh my God, this black eyeliner's got everywhere. It was just a bit of a shit show, and he was just basically isolating me from my own family. Same with work. Like I say, with like the college and that, whenever I'd get a job, he would encourage me to have time off, to spend time with him. I think I would make friends. I would make friends at my jobs, and I don't think he liked that, especially if me and those friends wanted to meet up after work. That was a big issue for him. He did not like that, and he would want to see if he could come with and stuff like that. And these people didn't want him to come with. He wasn't part of our workforce, or they didn't know him, and they kind of thought it was weird that he would want to do that. God, I've messed up this makeup, but you know, it's just to keep me busy anyway. What was I saying? Yeah, anyway, isolating me from my family and my friends and things like that. Taking away all the things that made me happy. And I ended up getting into modelling quite by accident. I walked past his store that I always used to like love looking in. I never used to go in there because I could tell it was a boutique, it was a fancy shop, and I never like going into shops where you kind of have to ask the prices. I didn't know they actually were priced up, and I just assumed it wouldn't be priced up, so I didn't go in. But one day I was walking past, and the owner popped out and was like, are you related to Terry? And I was like, no. I don't know anyone called Terry. He's like, you look just like Terry. He's like, what would you fancy like modelling for me? Like, we've got a fashion show coming up in a few weeks. Would you like to do it? I'd like you to model. I think it'd be nice that you and Terry look so similar. And I was like, sure, I'll do that. I never thought I was pretty enough to be a model. So I was quite flattered by that, and I'll get to try on all these fancy clothes I see in the window that I really wanted to wear. So I was like really happy about it. This did not make Sonam very happy. He loved to brag to people that he's got a model girlfriend, but he did not like the fact that I was modelling. Was not something that floated his boat really, because it was, again, something that would raise my self-esteem, you know. The whole time I was modelling, like, I was a little bit older during this time. So I wasn't taking the same kind of BS from him like he would with the dance and the singing and stuff. He'd already worn those things out of me, you know. They were gone. They were distant memories by this point. Modeling was my last thing that I could have that was slightly performance, you know. And I actually really enjoyed it. I didn't think I would enjoy it so much. I really did enjoy my time as a model, and I spent quite a long time modeling. I modeled even past when I had kids. And I'm still technically registered now with my agency. If I wanted to get jobs, I could hit them up and be like, yo, can you put me for some castings or whatever? Wait, I haven't done this slide properly. Anyway, before nearly every modeling job, actually I would say every modeling job, he would start some massive fucking argument that would go on to like 3-4 in the morning, and he knew I had to get up. Why have I just got Rosie Posey out? I'm like, okay, this cheek. He knew I had to be up early. Some of these jobs I had to be up at like 5 in the morning to get a train to London, things like that. So he was just, I think he was hoping that if he wore me out enough, I wouldn't go on these jobs. But I always would. I wasn't gonna let anyone down for the modelling. I went anyway. Even if I was fucking exhausted, I still went. Pissed him off. There was one job, I've got the photos of it still, where I was doing Rosie Posey all along. I thought I was doing Snatcher. I just got my nails done for this photo shoot. I never really get my nails done, and I just thought, you know what, it'd be really nice to have my nails all pretty one time. And I got my nails done, and that evening, it was the night before the job, he started this big ass freaking fight, and my nails ended up getting ripped off. And he was like, I guess you can't go to a job tomorrow. It's like, well, I'm not hand modeling, I can still go. I was like, when I look at those photos, like the photos are pretty, but they're like a photo shoot I don't really like looking at that much. It was one that was for a magazine. I just look so sad. It's because I'm sad and I'm tired. Because that was one of the jobs where I realised that this is a pattern that keeps happening with him. Whenever I have a modelling job, he finds a way to kind of ruin it for me, you know. And he did. He ruined it. Because now when I look at those pictures, I look so sad. And that's what I'm reminded of, is the fact that my nails got ripped off. It was a nasty fight. I think that was the fight I got bitten in as well. He bit me in the leg. I've still got the scar on my leg from where he bit me. Yeah, and I think that was like around the time where I realized this is like a true pattern that keeps happening. He keeps starting these fights, and he would start fights over really weird things. Like, he was quite racist. He was quite a racist person. I remember one of the fights that happened before a modelling job. We were watching something on TV, and Obama came up. And he was like, oh, Obama's only as smart as he is. The only reason why he's a president is because he's mixed race. And I was like, what? And he's like, it's true. Black people aren't genetically as smart as white people. And I'm like, you said some shit before, but this is wild. So this is something that I bit. He would say things that he knew would make me bite, you know. He knew it was going to set me off, and this set me off. And this is like a night before a modelling job. There's me going off at him, and he's like, it's the same for you too. The only reason why you're smart, the only reason why you're as pretty as you are, is because you're half white. And he said to me, when we have kids, our kids will be smarter than you and better looking than you, because they'll be even more white. I'm so mad even thinking of it. Like, I let someone talk me. I didn't let him. We had a fucking Barney. About it. But the fact that he had the audacity to say it to my fucking face. We were just sitting there watching TV, and that something came up about Obama, and that's just thrown at me from nowhere. I took that shit, you know, for years. I still stayed with him for years after that. Like a good 2-3 years maybe. But it was around this time where I was like, I don't want to be with this man. I don't like him. And we started having arguments about these kids that we would have, you know. And I would say that, well, what if you abused me? What if you hurt me? What if you beat me up? Could I leave you then? And he's like, no, He's like, if you left me, I would take the kids. And he'd be like, and I'll be able to as well because I'm white. They won't listen to you. He's like, I know mums normally get the kids, but are they going to really give a kid to a black mum over a white dad? And he'd be like, I would still fight for the custody because even though I'd beaten you up or I cheated on you, he's like, you're the one who chose to break up the family. It would have been your fault that the family got broken up. And this is where I really thought, I can't be with him. I can't be with him for the rest of my life. By this point, I think his parents had moved here by now and we had gotten engaged. But I was like so checked out. I was so checked out by this point. And even his parents would say to him, they'd be like, you know, you don't treat Rianne right. And then like his dad would tell him and say like, you know, I think Rianne's good for you. She gives you back. She doesn't let you just get away with everything that you say. But I don't think they really realized, like, because they didn't see the worst of it. The fact that they noticed something just showed, because our friends never really thought anything bad was going on between us. They thought everything was peachy. If anything, I was the problem, because they would see how I would react to things that he would say, but they wouldn't realize that he was intentionally pressing my buttons while we're around people, and I'm trying like to hold it together, but I maybe get a bit moody or something, and they'd just be like, oh, Rianne's on a bit of a moody one, why is she like being a bit off or whatever, and just look bad on me, because they weren't realizing that he's actually winding me up on purpose. And they'd think, oh, he's so patient with her, you know, like I'm like this teenage girl kind of thing. Like, I was younger. They always knew me younger. Like, these are a lot of friends we had when we worked at Game Station. But we didn't go out that often, actually. He didn't like to go out that often. Sometimes there was one time in particular where like we got invited out to the pub, and we both agreed to go, and then last minute he said he didn't want to go, and I was like, no, I've been really looking forward to this, I really want to go. And I said, I'm going to go anyway, and he tried really hard to stop me, but I still went anyway. And then like later on in the night he turned up, and like we'd all been having a good time until he got there, and then that the energy changed. I think that was one time where people realized that, hey, maybe it isn't Rianne who's the problem, you know. Whenever we've like got together as a group and it seemed like Rianne was the problem, maybe it's Sonam, because he had been saying we're gonna go, and I said I really wanted to come, so I came anyway on my own. And they were like, oh, that's weird, you know. It was just a bit of an odd situation because so much went against what normally would happen. And even then, like I say, we didn't actually go out that much. Anyway, I got on a tangent again. Where was I said about his family, the fact that they had picked up on stuff, like his sister, his dad, his mum, they had all picked up. And by this point, I wasn't even really allowed to hang out with my family. I weren't really allowed to talk to them. He'd even managed to get me and his ex-girlfriend to be friends. We had to hang out a lot. There was even one point where we lived with her. We did. It was a messed up situation. Whatever. I'm not gonna you know what, I've got like 20 minutes left, so I need to try and get through some of this stuff. Okay, this is the bit that kind of is the worst stuff. So, you know, I was saying about earlier when we first got together, I was living in my family home and he used to pinch me. Well, during that time, he had, I hate that I have to censor words like this, because it makes it seem like the people who are victims of these things have got something to be ashamed of, because if we say the word, we get punished for it, when really it's the perpetrator. We all know it's the perpetrator who's done something wrong, not us. But then if we want to try and tell our stories, we get punished for saying the real words. So I'm going to have to censor the word, and I hate that I have to censor the word. I don't want to risk me going through all of this and then YouTube be like, we're not going to let anyone see this video because you're saying words we don't like. But these things happen to me, and I think it's wrong for YouTube to censor me like that. So when I was 17, he did grape, R-word me. He knew I didn't want to do anal. It was something I wasn't interested in. And one time we were having just like normal sex, and he TMI, guys. But so if you don't want to hear this, I will try and put a timestamp on the screen where you're going to want to skip to, so you can skip all of this, because this is the essay part of our relationship. We were just having normal sex, and he forced it. I did get him off, but he kept being like, just give it a go, let me try for a bit longer, you know. I couldn't get away from him. He wouldn't like let me get up or away, so I don't really have a choice. He's like saying, let me a bit longer, and there was no like lubricant or anything. But with me protesting enough, like, he did eventually stop. Then I didn't really want to do any more of normal sex with him, and then he got mad at me for basically blue balling him because he hadn't finished. So then I had to help him finish and let him do stuff. He did that to me twice. There was another time years later when we were living in the flat we had together where he did that again. The exact same thing. But that's not even the essay that bothered me the most. The thing that haunts me, and it always, because he knew for years that something that bothered me about my childhood is how I used to get CSA'd, and it would always be while I was sleeping. There was two people, one that was regular who used to do it to me, and one who was a one-off, and both those people waited till I was asleep to do what they wanted to do to me. And he knew that I kind of didn't, I kind of be like, I didn't feel safe when I slept. People would do stuff to me when I was sleeping. And he was kind of obsessed with speculums, like, just with that area. He used to like to let him shave me and things like that. But he really likes speculums. And he got a little plastic one at one point when we still lived in the house that was owned by his girlfriend, or his ex-girlfriend by that point. But then by the time we moved into the flat, he got himself a medical grade one. And when he'd got that one, I'm not very good at drinking. Like, I can have like a glass or maybe a little can of cider, and I'm more than happy, you know, and I'm done. I, especially back then, I wouldn't even be able to drink more than I could, because like the smell of alcohol would start making me go like, I don't want any. So I really couldn't over drink that often. So he would get me stoned and drunk, which I wasn't used to being both at the same time. Things like that. Or just, he would just wait till he knew I was exhausted. Like, we had several arguments, I'd done a modelling job, and he knew that I'd have like a day where I could like sleep. I don't know how he, like, sometimes I would wake up just like I would when I was a kid, which I think also haunts me. Because whenever I'd wake up when I was a kid, after a while, when I was a kid and the person who did it regular, for a while, I would wake up and I'd hit him and he would fall off my bed, but then I'd go back to sleep and he'd come back. So after a while, I'd realised that I I kept falling asleep at school, so I wasn't getting enough sleep. So after a while, I realised that if I just let him do it and pretend that I was asleep, I could get enough sleep to stay awake at school, right? So with Sonam, sometimes when I would wake up, where I wasn't like wasted, you know, and just asleep, and he would wake me up from doing what he was doing, I'd pretend like I hadn't woken up, because I don't know if it was like reverting back to a previous state of trauma in those moments. I don't know. But I've always felt so much shame for letting people do stuff to me like that, because I knew there wasn't any way of stopping it. No matter how much I protest, they're going to come back and do it anyway. And it's just going to be dragged out for longer, and I'm going to feel the effects of it tomorrow by being tired and not be able to do what I'm meant to be doing, things like that. But anyway, Sonam would insert the speculum in me, and then he would put random objects inside me, bottle caps, pencils, key rings, into me while I was opened up by the speculum. And then he'd take pictures, and then the next day he would show me the pictures, and then he would like offer me money, so it was like I was his personal prostitute. And then it got to the point where it was kind of established that this is what he does to me, and he would be like, you know what, I want to do that tonight. What if I give you £100, you let me? And it's like, for a while I say no. You know, you're telling me you're going to do this beforehand, and I'm telling you no. And he'd do it anyway. And I know it's wrong. But once that's happened a few times and you're still getting the same thing happen to you, and he offering you money beforehand, it's like, fine. But I want 150, or I want this, or I want that. Because it was going to happen anyway. So I thought, why not? You know, and so I have a lot of shame for that still. And like, I know if I was someone else was telling me this, I'd be like, you know, that's not your fault. He would have done it anyway, because he'd already proven to you that he does. You say no, he does it anyway, and then you get nothing. You may as well. I don't know. It's hard to reconcile in my mind about that, but that's what happened. And that's what he'd do. So there was that. That's the essay part of it. Anyway, when I got to that point where I was like, I don't want to be with this man anymore. He wants to have kids with me. He actually wanted to start trying for kids, and I really didn't want to, because I was scared of all the things he'd said, all the kind of threats he'd made about, you know, if I ever wanted to leave him, he would take the kids from me. And I tried breaking up with himself. We'd broken up multiple times during this time. I'd be like, that's it, we're over. I don't want to be with you anymore. And I want you to leave, and he wouldn't leave. And sometimes I would say, I'm going to throw your stuff out, you know. And one time I did. I threw some of his stuff out the front door, and he called the police on me and said it was criminal damage. And they came out to come talk to me. And they see his stuff outside, and they were like, well, they'd have a word with me and say, I can't like damage his things. But I hadn't damaged any of his things. Like, they were out in the main area of the flat, you know, like, it wasn't like outside getting rained on or anything. But that would give him enough time to kind of win me back over, like he always did. And there was like, I thought there was no way for me to leave. I remember I was talking to this girl I was working with at the time, and I said to her, I swear I could be a prostitute, and he wouldn't let me go. And there were so many things he'd say that if I ever did, he wouldn't be with me. Like, if I ever got a tattoo, he wouldn't be able to be with me then, so I'd be trashy because I had a tattoo, you know. if I'd ever done any like sex work, he wouldn't be with me because I'd be like tarnished, basically, something like that. If I'd ever done like porn, for instance, even though he loved recording us, recording me, I don't know. Anyway, there was this lad I really fancied at school, and we ended up becoming friends on Facebook, and we started talking, and he apologized because everyone knew I fancied him. Everyone knew at school that I fancied him. He was the nerd at school, and everyone thought it was really, really funny because no one fancied me at school. Don't get it twisted, no one fancied me. People would use me as the butt joke. Oh, you fancy Rian? Because I was like the only black girl. So it was like the joke, who would fancy me, right? And even him, the biggest nerd in the school, was embarrassed by the fact that I fancied him. But years later, we came into contact, and he apologized and said how he felt foolish. And we got kind of a little bit close, and a bit too close, you know. And this is when I realised that Sonam had some kind of tabs on me, because this time we went on a video call and we started doing stuff, me and this lad. It wasn't lad anymore, we're both grown. But the lad from my old school. And Sonam came bursting in the flat, because he'd been at his parents' house, which were like a 20-minute walk from where we were. He came bursting in, out of breath, so I think he'd ran as well. And basically busted us. And it came out, he told me that he can see everything that I write to people. He said he'd been suspicious of me ever since he'd seen what I'd been talking about with that girl. I'd said, like, I could be a prostitute. So he knew I wanted to leave him. He knew I wanted to leave because he'd seen what I said about that girl. But, you know what, now I think about it, he must have already had tabs on me to see what I'd said to that girl. Unless he just, like, snuck on my profiles and, like, read every message I had from random people, you know, who he just didn't recognise their name, because he didn't know this girl. He'd never met her. But he said he had this, like, thing that was attached to my laptop. And he could see every chat I had. Like, as I type, it's like a keyboard thing. So he could see what I was typing to people, and he'd get, like, the chats or whatever. So I realised I was always being watched. I don't know how long it had been going on for. I didn't know. But that put an end to that anyway. And I really thought that would be the end. I really thought, that's my way out. I finally got rid of him. I cheated on him. He always said if I ever cheated on him, we'd be over. But he managed to excuse it. He's like, well, you didn't do anything physical. I'll forgive you. So no, we didn't break up. Still stayed with him. I think for like another year and a bit, maybe. I don't know. It's really hard to tell the times for me. It's just this awful period of my life. Anyway, we did stay together. I thought it was over though. For a good couple of days, I thought, I'm finally going to be free. Like, couldn't have really gone any better. I didn't really want to be with this lad from school anymore. It was just more like a wish fulfillment moment. Like this fantasy I'd had for years at school kind of coming true for a minute. And there's this added byproduct that was a bonus, where my current relationship that I wasn't happy in would end. Because by this point as well, I would talk to people at work. I would go for a lot of different jobs because he would make me not want to go into work and things like that. And also, I would get burnt out. I do have neurodivergence, and I would get burnt out and want time off myself. And so him encouraged me to do that. Like, I would lose a lot of jobs, and I was always really good at my jobs. I always work really well. No, I was never a complaint about any of the jobs I worked in. I worked very well. I just didn't always show up. But yeah, there would be girls that I would get friends with, and I would just talk to them. We'd talk about our boyfriends and that, and there'd be things that I would say, and they'd look at me like horrified, and I'd be like, Isn't that normal? So like years of this kind of stuff happening, I realized it weren't normal. Then when there's these few racist statements come out where he's saying about how I'm only as smart as I am or as pretty as I am is because I'm half white, and how he'd take our kids from us if we had kids. These were things that all kind of come together. And so for the last 2 years of relationship, I was just trying to get out of it, honestly. I broke up with him a lot more times, a lot more frequently. So I want us to be over, but it was always during an argument. And it got to the point where I said to him that I think the only way we're going to end up breaking up is if one of us kills the other one. I said, I could see him killing me in rage, or I said I'd had nightmares of stabbing him. Like my nightmare was that I'd be in the kitchen doing the dishes, washing a sharp knife, and he'd come in and scare me in his tantrum, angered rage, and I'd stab him. And then I'd be in prison for the rest of my life and he'd be dead. Or the other way around, we'd just be fighting and he'd throw something at me or strangle me to death, you know. I was legitimately scared that the only way I was going to be able to get out of this relationship was if one of us had died. And I didn't want that, you know. So I was trying to get out of it. I just couldn't see a way. But one day, I was working at, it was when after I started modelling, I'd actually started working for that boutique. Started working there. I was actually quite high up at that point in this shop. And one of the stores they had was really close to a game store, not game station, but game. And there was a lad who worked there, and he was just really nice to me. And I realised that, okay, my relationship is really bad. And this man is just nice. He's just nice. And he'd say things to me like, one day I'll take you to E3. And I was like, that's crazy. But he was just nice. You know, he was just nice. And I kind of fell for him a little bit, you know. I don't know. I think he just showed me that things could be different, and that even though sometimes says that, yeah, I could find other people that no one put up with me, I felt like people would put up with me. I felt like this lad I keep calling him lad, but he was the same age as me. I think he was actually a little bit older than me. But it showed that people would, and someone was just being a dick. You know, I started to cotton on to what Sonam had been doing all this time, you know? And one day I got on the bus and I just started crying because I just realised that I'm going to break up with Sonam and it's going to be the end. And I was sitting on one of those seats where there's like two sets of seats facing each other, and this person got onto the bus and sat down in front of me. And they tapped me and was like, are you okay? Because I was crying. I wasn't loud or anything, but I was crying and looking out the window, and there was a lot of tears. And I was like, yeah, it's fine, you know. And the guy kind of just left me to it. And then when I got home, the first thing I did, I walked in, Sonam was playing on the console, and I sat down next to him and I said, I want to break up. I don't want to be with you anymore. And there was something about that registered with him. He knew I meant it, because all the other times I broke up with him, it was during or after an argument, like a fight. And he'd always managed to like make me realise or make me feel like the only reason why you're saying that is because we were angry and emotions were high and stuff. And so this time it weren't like that. There was no fight. I didn't even get a chance to have a conversation for a fight to start, you know. I just sat down and calmly told him I don't want to be with you anymore. But he refused to move out. He agreed that we'd be broken up, but he refused to move out. He'd still do things to me while I slept. He'd still do stuff. He just knew that I was not in it, but he would not leave. He would not leave. He stayed in my house for a year after I broke up with him. It was only because like I said, the flat was in my name. It was only when I met Jared online and I said to Jared, well, Jared said he wanted to come see me. He didn't want to wait anymore. He wanted to come see me. And that's my children's father, is Jared. And he said he's going to be there in 3 days. And so I told Sana, I said, look, Sana, I got a new boyfriend. And he's going to be here in 3 days. You can either go or you can be here when he's here. And all that time, that whole year where he was imposing himself in my flat, he said, oh, he can't move. He hasn't got the funds, the ability to move out. He was gone in 2 days. He was gone in 2 days. Because me and Jared stayed in a hotel the first night he'd got here. And he'd find out that Sonam had actually left sooner. So that was hilarious. He could actually leave. All along. Of course he could. He just didn't want to. And after, and I had kids and stuff, he still, like, he tried to manipulate me and stuff. He would say to me, oh, my computer broke, I lost all our sex tapes and things. Like, they weren't even sex tapes, they were tapes that he'd filmed and I didn't even give consent to. But he's like, would you record me some more stuff, or would you let me record some more stuff? It's like, I've got someone. He would not stop harassing me. At one point I did let him record a little bit of something just so he would leave me alone. So I said, look, after this we don't have any more contact, you know. And he was like, fine. But he still tried to keep contact with me. And he told me one time, he said that the only reason he never left the flat was because he was hoping that if he stayed there long enough, I would just give up and take him back. They were his words. You would give up and take me back. And I didn't. And he was really shocked that I didn't. But yeah, there was one time really early on when he'd moved out, I let him take some pictures. Because he'd been like, oh, I lost all our pictures. I lost all the videos and stuff. And I said, look, if you just leave me alone. Like, because he was stalking us. He was stalking our flat and trying to tell the neighbours that Jared was this creep hanging around people's windows and stuff. And I was like, and we'd see him. Like, there was a park right outside my window and you could see Sonam just like on the swing for hours, just looking in the direction of our flat for ages. And I just went to all my neighbours that it's not Jared. Jared's been home with me. I said, that's Sonam who's creeping around the building, you know. But I was never really sure what Sonam would be capable of. So we did actually maintain some contact after the photos. And I'm like, you leave us alone. And I got pregnant, right? When I had the kids, well, when I had Rue, I kind of wanted the people that had no one to see. I also kind of wanted him to see. I wanted him to see that I have moved on. I have a baby now, you know. I was married and I had a baby. And I invited him round to come meet her. I think I'd seen him in town and he'd said like, oh, he'd like to see. And I was like, yeah, come around and have a look. We'd arranged a day and a time and everything. And he didn't come. And then the next day he decided to like kind of show up. And I was like, why didn't you come yesterday? We waited for you. I've got like a life. I've got things to do. That disrupted our whole day that you didn't turn up. And he's like, I didn't turn up because really that baby should have been my baby. He's a freaking psycho. The guy thought he owned me. Even years after we'd broken up, now I'm now married and with a kid, he still thought he had some kind of claim over me and my eggs even. Like, what the Anyway. I've got through my list. And like, my little girls will be back home. There's so much more I could say, but I really feel like I've got through the major beats, and this video is very long. So I'm going to leave it here. I'm sorry that it isn't a nice story. But I hope that anyone who might come across this, who is in a questionable relationship and you're not sure if it's normal, and you recognize anything in my story in your relationship, and it helps you realize that it's not normal. Because I was lucky. I mean, I didn't talk about how he nearly broke my nose. I still think he broke my nose, and I still covered it up for him as well. I covered up, like, we were broken up. That was one of the fights I said about towards the end. I remember what the fight was about. He wanted me to wash his shirt for work, and I was like, no. Well, I had washed it. I hadn't dried it how he wanted me to dry it. And I said, I'm not your mum. Which I say to him a lot, even when we were together. I said, I'm not your mum. If you want something done just so, get your mum to do it or do it yourself. I'd hung his shirt out to dry. I'd washed it. I said, you're lucky that I washed this shirt. And we met me watching My Bloody Valentine 3D. And I was putting it into the Xbox, and I threw the 3D glasses behind me. I wasn't looking. I just threw the 3D. They was like the cardboard ones, and they hit him or something. And he kicked the back of my leg, so I kind of fell to the floor. And then I was like cussing him out because we weren't together at this point. We were broken up, but I was cussing him out. And then I sat down next to him, and he punched me in the face, right in the freaking nose. And like it just kind of went black and like a bright light, and I opened my eyes again, and there was just like blood coming out of my nose, and he's running behind me. I'm running off to the bathroom, so I'm just like, oh my god. He went, but I'm so sorry. And I'm like, lock the door, took pictures, because I was like, oh no, because like we're not together at this point. And for weeks afterwards, I wore sunglasses, and it wasn't even sunny. It wasn't even sunny. And because he begged me not to let people see all the bruising. I had so much bruising. I had a big old black eye. The other eye was bruised, but not as black as the other one. And my nose, I couldn't touch it for weeks. Just to touch it was just like painful. When I see someone get punched in the face now, it makes me, because I can feel it. I remember how that feels. There was one point I wanted to say. You know how I said earlier on here, I wasn't to get my family involved in our squabbles, airing our dirty laundry. All those fights that we had, you know, I said he bit my leg and my nails got ripped off and stuff. I couldn't tell anyone about these things. I've been conditioned already by this point not to say anything to my friends and family. During all those arguments afterwards, apparently he was taking pictures of every little scratch, every little bump that he'd got during those fights, taking pictures, and he'd show his family. He'd show his family and say, yeah, look what Rianne does to me. At the same time, I'm covering it all up. All the actual damage he was doing to me, I was covering it all up. So his family thought I was just, and his friends, some of his friends as well, they thought I was abusing him. And all these are like little defensive scratches and stuff where I'm like, trying to stop him. Where in the meantime, I've got nails ripped off from their beds and like fucking bite marks. But the first time he ever properly punched me was that in the face after we'd broken up. All the times he'd hit me like that, it was around the body. But a lot of times he'd put me in like locks. He'd like leg lock me and get my head down and sit on me, things like that. He'd hurt me in other ways, throw things at me. So yeah, you know, there was that time where he punched me in the face, and then the whole time, ever since he'd started being violent with me, if he ever got a tiny little scratch or a little bruise, he'd take a picture and show it. Because I'd shown the pictures of the blood to someone, his sister and one of his friends I'd shown the pictures of, like after the injuries had cleared up. And they're like, oh, he used to show us pictures of the things that you did to him. And I'm like, huh? What things did I do to him? They're like, oh, you have like scratches and little bruises and stuff here and there. I was like, so that's like when the penny dropped for me, that all this time he'd been documenting every little injury that he'd come out of, the fights that he'd started, where I'd come off worse, but I'd been conditioned to keep it all to myself, not even talk to anyone. So please, if you recognise any of these signs, I was really lucky that I got away. And Gabby Petito was one of those ones who wasn't, you know? I don't know how to know if, it's safe or not to get away. I don't know. I was really lucky. Like, I feel like I was really, really lucky. All I know is you shouldn't stay in it. So, I don't know. But if I can, like, at least just tell you my story, if it gives anyone comfort that they're not alone, that they've been through this stuff before and they know and it's over for them, or like I say, it helps someone realize that they're not in a relationship that's right and they can leave, I hope it helps that way. I'm going to go. I'm going to love you and leave you. And I'll see you in a happier video.